Okay. What if I wanted to graph this one? 4 times y equals 7. Now, this equation doesn't have an x in it, so this is one of our special equations. First thing I want to do is solve this equation for y. So I have 4 times y equals 7. First thing I would need to do, since I have 4 times y, undo that by dividing by 4. So that tells me that y is equal to 1 3/4. Let's change it to a mixed number, or 1.75. Now what this actually tells me, with no x in there, that tells me that any point that I choose for x, any coordinate that I choose for x, whether it be, make a little table here, whether it be 0 or 1 or -2, my y coordinate is always going to be 1 3/4. So whether I have 0 and 1 3/4 right there, or 1 and 1 3/4, or -2 and 1 3/4, my y coordinate will always be 1 3/4. So anytime you have y equals a number with no x in it, it's always going to give you a horizontal line crossing the y-axis at whatever that point is. It'll be a horizontal line crossing the y-axis. And it's just the opposite for x equals a number. If it's just x equals a number with no y in the equation, it'll always be a vertical line crossing the x-axis. So let's look at this graph and see how it works. So just like that. So that's the graph of y equals 1 3/4. So if it asks for my y-intercept, clearly my y-intercept is 1 3/4, and there's no x-intercept for that one. So my y-intercept is here at 1 3/4, and there's no x-intercept because it never crosses the x-axis. Okay. Let's look at a couple of word problems. Or before we do that, let's see here. Let's look at this problem here. It says find an equation in slope-intercept form. So that means y equals mx plus b. Find an equation in slope-intercept form passing through the points 7.2, 3.8, and 9.1 and 9.1. So what I like to do, I like to label my points. So since this is the first point that I see, I'm going to label it x1, y1. I'm going to label this x2, y2. And the first thing I have to do to write my equation in slope-intercept form is I have to know what the slope is. So I have to use my slope formula that we just learned a few slides back, that said that we have y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So in this case, I would have 9.1 minus 3.8 y2 minus y1 over 9.1 for the x2 minus 7.2. That would simplify to be 5.3 over 1.9, which would give me 2.79. And what slope is a rate of change. So it's really 2.79 over 1. And that rate of change tells me that for every time I go over 1 on the y in the x direction, I'm going up 2.79 in the y direction. Or up 2.79 over 1, up 2.79 over 1. That's just a rate of change. Now, we need the slope because we're going to actually use the point slope form to get us where we need to be. And remember, the point slope form was y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Well, you have everything you need. You have your x1 and your y1 to replace your y1, your x1 and y1, and you just found your m at 2.79 here to replace your m. So I can rewrite this equation, or write this equation out as y minus 3.8 equals the m we just found, 2.79 times x minus, here's my x1, 7.2. And I can go through using my algebra to actually get this in slope-intercept form. Remember, slope-intercept form, the main thing is to have y by itself on one side. So let's get rid of our parentheses first by using distributive property. So we get 2.79x, multiply 2.79 times that negative 7.2, and looks like we get 20.088. Okay. And now we need to add 3.8 to both sides. Add it here. So now this will give me y all by myself. This will give me y equals 2.79x and minus, because this is negative and a positive, so we have to take the difference, minus 16.288. And here's the equation in slope-intercept form. Y equals, here's my slope, here's my y-intercept. So to do this, we found the slope first, and then we plug the slope and the point x1, y1 into this equation and got y by itself. And we're actually going to do this again on the next problem. The next problem is a word problem. So let's look at this, and we're going to use the same method pretty much to solve it. It says a furniture company sells 3,000 chairs per week at the price of $150 a piece. When the price is lowered to $125, the company sells 3,500 chairs per week. Now, if the company wishes to liquidate its entire remaining inventory of 4,250 chairs in the next week, what price should they seek? So first of all, let's find the rate of change between the 2 weeks when they lowered the price. So I'm going to, we've been using x, y. So since we're not talking about x and y anymore, I'm going to do dollars in the x place and the chairs in the y place. So the chairs will be y, the price will be x. So that's my y1, that's my x1, that's my x2, and that's my y2. So let's write this out in ordered pair. So dollars and chairs, we had $150. When the price was $150, we sold 3,000 chairs that week. And then we dropped the price to $125, and we sold 3,500 chairs that week. So my first objective is going to be to find the slope. Find the rate of change. So that's the x1, that's the y1 in my formula, that's the x2, that's the y2 in my slope formula. So simply 3,500 minus 3,000, and we're just finding out what's happening when we change the price. How many more chairs are we selling when we drop the price by a certain amount? So work this out. 3,500 minus 3,000, 125 minus 150. Calculate it. Get 500. 125 minus 150 is going to give us negative 25. And then if I divide that, that gives me negative 20 over 1, or 20 over negative 1. And that 20 over negative 1, what that really means is that for every dollar that I drop in price, I sell 20 more chairs. I average selling 20 more chairs for every time I drop $1 in price. So here's my slope. Now, the other piece of information said, well, if I want to liquidate the entire inventory of 4,250 in the next week, what should I do? How much should I drop the price? Well, what that's given me now, it's given me another coordinate. But before we do that, let's go ahead and write our equation out in point slope form. Remember, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So I can write this equation out, and then if I have this equation, I can figure out whatever I want to figure out from any other information they give me. So y, remember, here's my y1 is 3,000. And then my m, we just found my rate of change or slope is negative 20. And then x minus x1 is 150. So now they tell me, well, I want to sell the $4,250, but 50 chairs, but I need to figure out how much I need to lower my price, or what does my price need to be for that to happen. So remember, the 4,250, that was the chairs, and that was in our y place. So I can use this new equation that I have, replace my y with that 4,250, and I can find out what I need my x to be, or what I need my price to be. So 4,250 minus 3,000, and you just write the rest of the equation out like it is. I'm trying to figure out what x should be, or what the price should be for this to happen. So 4,250 minus 3,000 equals negative 20 times x minus 150. All right, so go ahead and subtract this, get these combined. It gives me 1,250 equals, use my distributive property over here, negative 20x plus 3,000. And then we want to, let's get the x isolated. So let's go ahead and subtract the 3,000. And I have my x over here by itself. And when I subtract 3,000, that gives me negative 1,750 equals negative 20 x. Undo negative 20 times x by dividing, and that'll give me x equals 8750. So what that tells me is that if I want to sell this next 4,250 chairs, then at the rate of change that I had, then I need to price them at $87.50. That's how much each chair would need to be. Well, that's the end of the videos for this week. End of the examples. I hope they help you. I wish you all a great week. Be sure to read through all of your lecture material and look at the examples in the textbook for the assigned reading sections. And you all have a great week.